Hello and welcome to Aquarium Dilemmas. I'm your host, ScienceGal Aquatics. I'm Kerri, and this is my co-host,
Jesse, and welcome. Thank you for tuning in for another wonderful episode.
Yes, today's conversation, I don't know if we have, it's going to be a very long conversation, but it's a very important topic to talk about.
Yes, it is. You get new fish, what to do, quarantine, to quarantine, to not quarantine.
Always quarantine.
What?
I have learned my lesson the hard way and thinking that it's not important and it's a step worth skipping. And let me tell you, quarantine your fish.
Well, and there's also a lot of other benefits to it too as well.
But kind of taking a step back, I would say there's a couple different tanks that you should have if you have a larger fish room: a quarantine tank, a hospital tank, and a grow out tank for your fry. And a hospital tank and a quarantine tank are very similar. They're used for very similar circumstances. Sick fish, preventing illness if you see something pop up, but it's good to have both. Now, do I always do that? Am I a responsible fish keeper and sit here and say I always have that set up? No. But there are ways to quickly set up a quarantine tank or a hospital tank. But I think, especially if you have a larger fish room, this is something that you should have. If you're new to fish keeping and you just have one aquarium, have something around that if you need to have a hospital tank or you get new fish and you need to quarantine, have it something available.
Well, and if you're not having monster fish and you're a 10-gallon tank just set off to the side would be perfect.
Yes.
Bare bones, you don't have to have any substrate, nothing in it. You can even, if you want to do something super special, you got a little hang on the back filter that maybe use some media from an already cycled tank.
Yeah. Like I said, I've had periods in my fish keeping that I have had it set up, ready to go. And this is the one circumstance that I usually do have it bare bone. If I have substrate, it's very little, if any. It's usually, I will be honest, my quarantine tank, when it is set up, usually does become a permanent home for whatever new fish I'm getting. So let's say I got some new guppies in and I have them in quarantine. I've had this tank set up. It's bare bottom. There's nothing in it. And they're in quarantine. It would not be surprising, and it's probably a very high percentage, that eventually, after a few weeks, that tank's going to have substrate. That tank's going to have plants, and that tank is going to be that new guppy. That's me. So then it takes me a while to set up a new quarantine tank because I had a quarantine tank, but it quickly became a species, whatever I'm quarantining at the time tank. And one of the things that I have found that, kind of going back to what you were saying, if you can set them up quickly and you don't have to have 10-gallon tanks are usually what I use, because if I need to medicate, I have problems dosing, so it comes in a very this packet is for a 10-gallon tank, so that's why I use it if I do have to use medication. But you can use other things. I've had a quarantine tank and a hospital tank as a tote before. And you can, since you're not worrying about what it looks like, your beautiful scape, just take some media, put it into that tank, let it go for 24 hours, and then go buy your new fish or something and have something available to quarantine them in. It doesn't have to be a really expensive, nice-looking tank to be used as a quarantine tank or a hospital tank.
Well, and I also think the main thing of the quarantine, besides that, is be prepared to already quarantine your fish. Like you said, already have that.
Be a responsible fish keeper.
Already have that tote or whatever. Already have that tote or whatever with the airline and the water already going for a little bit to at least get the water cycle started.
Yes.
And then that way, you're not stressing those fish out if they do by chance already have problems when you bring them home.
Yeah,
because then you're doubling down on what could happen.
And jumping in, I guess we should. The whole point of quarantining your new fish is to basically, one, keep an eye on them and see if they're going to have something develop, because they're in a new environment. Their water's not going to be where they came from, is not going to be just like what you have in that tank. So it's kind of getting them a little bit used to your water too, but you're preventing your other fish from getting sick because you don't know what they've been exposed to. You don't know in a couple of days if they're going to have ick fin rot or ammonia burn from being in the bag for whatever reason. You don't know. They could have parasites. They could have, and then does it always happen? No. Could it happen? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And ick, like not going super deep and into all the disease, because that's
the disease realm is so big, and there's still diseases out there that they don't even know. Yeah. They don't even know what to call them yet. They just know they exist.
Yeah. But I will say, from fish keeping as a kid to now, the one thing that I deal with the most with dealing with new fish is ick. It's like a cold for fish. And if you keep fish for a long time, chances are you're going to encounter it at least once. Hopefully none. But that's the one that's the most common. And as soon as I put them in the quarantine tank, you don't always necessarily see it. Sometimes it takes a couple of days. And can you get rid of it? Yes. You just don't want to expose your new fish with whatever they've been through. And when they're in transit, that's when they're the most stressed. That's when they're most prone, in my head, to get sick.
Well, their immune system, they have an immune system. It goes down.
And if you've put, I don't care if it's a day or 15 years into this one tank and it's a beautiful community or a species-only tank, you don't want all of that to be exposed to something that you could have prevented by simply quarantining. And there's no specific time either. Sometimes I've quarantined for a week. Sometimes I've quarantined for forever because, like I said, that quarantine tank turned into their tank. So it just depends on what fish you're bringing in. Sometimes if you have a monster fish or something, hopefully when you get it, it's smaller and you have a chance to grow it out. So maybe you can quarantine it. Like I quarantined my silver arowana in a 20-gallon. It was a 20 long. It was in a 10-gallon at the fish store, but it was little bitty. Now it's like 2 feet plus. But I was lucky I could get it in at a smaller size and I could quarantine it in a smaller tote or whatever you have. It depends on what you're getting in. But the point of quarantining is to prevent your old fish getting exposed to something your new fish is bringing in.
Yes.
And that goes to not only plants, or fish too. It could be plants, it could be shrimp, it could, whatever, snails, whatever you're bringing into the fish room. And that was one thing that I was guilty. I was getting better at quarantining fish, but I didn't know I needed to quarantine plants too. But they could have snail eggs on them that you don't want. So if you quarantine them and they all hatch out in your quarantine tank, then
you have a bunch of snails, then you know what was on those plants.
I mean, there's numerous different things that they could be exposed to, and it's just good to be able to set them aside, keep them. I like to keep it no substrate, usually a sponge filter. Later on, I've learned that catappa leaves are a really good idea. It will tannin up your water, but it's a really good antibacterial for your fish. It really does help. So it
kind of kicks their immune system up a little bit. It kind of brings them back from being stressed out.
Yeah, and you can keep an eye on them. You can learn their personalities, and
that's what I was going to get into. If you're adding these fish to a community tank, you're going to get a little bit of chance in that quarantine period to look and see the nature of, are they kind of like a schooling or shoaling type? And are they pecking on each other already?
Yeah.
Are they aggressive to their own species?
Yeah.
And then you have to think, okay, well, I'm getting ready to launch this into this wonderful community tank I've got set up and had set up for 10 years. Maybe these shouldn't go in with that now.
I have a story for that when I was so excited about getting these Amicus splendens in the fish room. They're a goodied, they're a live bear, they're larger than the guppies, they have huge babies, and I was so excited about these fish. Got them sent in the mail to me, and I was like, in my good fish keeping, I was quarantining them. I had everything planned out, and I decided, because I recently got some really cute panda corridoras from PetSmart here in town. It was like a day or two in between. I was like, I'll just quarantine them all together and see what happens. Well, I quickly realized that those Amicus splendens, they're not aggressive to each other, but they will eat a lot of different things. And they just snacked up those corridoras, and I was just in shock. I was like, I had no idea. So one of the best parts about fish keeping is getting new fish that you've never kept. You get exposed to a species that you just instantly fall in love with and you have to keep and you just want them. And you go through the quarantining process and you realize that they are a different type of personality than you thought. You thought you could keep these with your guppy fish. And so they, during that quarantine process, had a 55-gallon set up just for them. We set up another 55-gallon, and they've been in there for a few years now, and they've reproduced a handful of times. And I learned through watching them during that quarantine process that they shouldn't be in a tank with other things.
No, they enjoy the company of their own species
and
will not tolerate much else.
Now, you might have some that can, but these need to be by themselves in a larger. I have them in a 55-gallon and they do really well, but that was not all. You can't have. I'm not going to say you can't have, because you can have anything that works for you. But if you have more than a couple of tanks and you want to keep a couple of different types of fish and you're adding them all the different time, maybe you can use your hospital tank in a quarantine tank or whatever you want, but don't necessarily quarantine all fish species together. Sometimes you do need to quarantine them in their own separate environments, because during the quarantine process, you're going to lose a whole lot of those fish. So,
oh yeah, that is a great story about that. And yes,
well, it's
you
not
did
great
do that
because I lost my Corys, but
you did do that. Well, this is a dilemma podcast.
Don't do
this
that.
is dilemma. These are episodes about our mistakes.
No, these are episodes about my mistakes that I don't want you to repeat.
Well, I've made a bunch of mistakes as well, but I've learned a bunch along the way with you. I think, though, the quarantine or the hospital tank setup, to learn about the fish a little bit before you introduce.
Oh, yes. Research.
Unless you're doing just like a big species-only tank. But then again, back to the quarantine process, you got more of the same species, but you don't want to infect by accident your original group.
Yeah, because you can, let's say I ordered fish A from here, fish B from here, and fish C from here. This one might be fine. This one might have ick, and this one might have something else, a parasite of some sort. And if you put them all together, they can, and it's hard to treat one thing when you're battling two different things,
well, and you don't know where it came from.
You don't have any idea. So
you don't know if you got it from your old fish, your new fish from one store, or the new fish from the other store.
I think that if you have one quarantine tank set up, you are doing an amazing job. And chances are, in my head, the average everyday fish keeper only has one or two fish tanks they probably have 1 or 2 different fish. And if they're getting a new fish, maybe they keep guppies and they're getting a pleco. And you can quarantine. I'm not going to say like everybody out there has a fish room like us that are ordering in way different types of fish all the time.
Well, the quarantine tanks for you that you were explaining earlier are just an extension of your multi-tank addiction.
I have a lot
that
of
is
tanks.
just a reason for you to be able to go, hey, you know what? We need to get another tank because I need a quarantine tank because this one I just decided looks really good the way it is.
Yes. So I think if you have one quarantine tank, you are doing great. Just keep in mind that if you're getting a bunch of different fish at the same time, maybe it's a good idea to have, like, set up a tote or something to get them, just to keep them. But if you're just getting like a handful of guppies, or maybe you got a betta or something, you can, if you know ahead of time that you're not going to put anything else into that tank, you're just setting up one tank for this one, or you're setting up a new tank for this one new fish, then that quarantine tank, you're quarantining them just because they're in their own tank.
Yes.
It's just hard to know everything they've been exposed to. It's hard to know. I know some people treat, let's say they set up their quarantine tank and they put this medicine in and this medicine in because they might have this and they might have that. That's a good idea if you choose it. I typically set up the quarantine tank, put them in there and see what develops. If I see ick, I'll treat ick. If I see fin rot, I'll treat fin rot. I'll treat the best I can with what I see. I don't necessarily pre-treat everything.
Yeah.
But if that's what you do and it works, there's no right or wrong way. Just keep in mind.
The goal is to not affect other fish. So if you've bought several different varieties and you're starting one new tank, then you would spread them out in 3 different little totes or 3 different little quarantine tanks before you put them all together.
Yeah. That's a better way.
That way you can narrow down what fish has what disease, and you can, it's a lot easier because there is so many different diseases out there. You're not the variable of, oh, well, which one really had this?
Because it's hard. I've been keeping fish for a long time and I still have trouble. And I know as I've gotten more experienced with fish keeping, there's not one thing that treats everything. There's not. I typically, with certain sicknesses or diseases, I have a go-to, and that's kind of morphed into a little bit of salt, some catappa leaves, some heat, and some time and patience. Do not get impatient. But does that help with everything? No. And it's still, as I get exposed to new fish and I keep new fish, it seems like every once in a while some kind of new issue pops up that I don't really know. It takes some time to even know what to do. So if they're in a tank by themselves for a while and it's kind of barricaded into that one tank, I don't know the word at the moment, but
it's contained.
It's contained into that one tank, and it's not, and let's say I'm using a 10-gallon, it's a little less water volume because it's hard to treat a 55, or like my arowana tank, 180 gallons. That's going to take a lot of medication to treat one specific fish. If it was, let's say it wasn't an arowana tank, it was a big community fish full of guppies, and I had 1 or 2 guppies that were sick, and I had to treat that whole tank. It's just easier if you put them in a confined 10-gallon, 20-gallon, especially if they're a small fish, and keep an eye on them. It's easier.
Well, it's easier to dose the medication. It's easier to watch the fish. It's easier to observe everything. So you know, you can kind of get a feel for what's going on, the fish's personality, everything else. Yeah. Another big, hot kind of topic in the fish world is quarantine how long? And the general, because I generalize everything, the general idea in my mind is about 2 to 4 weeks, somewhere in that vicinity. 2 weeks on the short side, because then you get to be able to see if any diseases, anything pops up going on, and you get some time to learn about what that fish is going to act like in your tank.
Yes.
So that's why I say 2 weeks if nothing goes wrong, up to 4 weeks. A lot of people do 4 weeks, but that covers your range of whether it's a big fish, small fish, and then you have time to kind of figure everything out. If you're scaping a tank or you're needing to add plants to this tank that's coming, that you're working on to put this fish in, it allows you a bigger cushion and time period.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
Well, and then you don't have to, again, back to your point, if something is wrong with the fish, patience.
Yes,
you have
patience
time.
is something
You have
that-
time to work on it, figure it out, do your research, talk to whoever you need to talk to, reach out to other people in the hobby, however you do it, whatever your goal is,
Yeah.
and then you can come up with a solution.
Yeah, because there's no magical time. I've quarantined fish for, like you said, a week or two, all the way up to I never took them out of quarantine because I just made that whole aquarium their aquarium forever. So it's just whatever you're comfortable with. Like you said, some people 2 weeks is a good roundabout time frame to kind of see what's going on, all the way up to a month. It's just whatever you're comfortable with. And if they do have something, if they need more treatment, if they're okay and you feel comfortable after 2 weeks and they're swimming, eating, and they're happy and there's nothing wrong, then go ahead and put them in wherever you want to put them permanently. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's why I kind of said that 2 to 4 weeks, because by the 2 week part, if there is something wrong, a sickness, a disease, an illness, their immune system was down, something's kind of off with them.
Because it takes some time.
You're going to notice it by then. Then you probably got 2 more weeks of watching them and figuring out how to treat the tank. And then after those 2 weeks, you're going to be like, okay, they're doing better, or they're not doing better, and I'm going to have to keep going.
Yeah, because it seems like when I was first doing this, I thought as soon as I got them acclimated, I put, like, don't put the fish water in the fish bag in your tank. Just don't do that. I used to do that, and that would create some problems too. Don't do that. If you can, strain it through a fish net, let the fish go in the fish net, and then drop them in. Don't just get rid of the fish water.
Well, and that's the same for your quarantine tank.
Yeah, just don't.
Shameless plug. Check out our episode about that, how to acclimate your fish. Because it's the same as quarantine. You don't want to dump that water in your quarantine tank either.
No.
Then you're just starting everything over again.
No, yeah, you don't want to do that. But I used to think that if they were going to get sick, it was going to be instantaneously. Like, as soon as they hit that water, I'm going to see whatever I'm going to see. And sometimes you can almost see it developing in the fish bag before you even open them. And sometimes it does take a couple of days, or if not a little bit longer, for all that to start. If they do have something, for you to notice it. It's not instantaneous in all circumstances. Like, oh, they're obviously sick. Sometimes some of that takes a couple of days and then you're like, oh, like we got some new tetras in and they were fine for a couple of days, and then boom, they had ick, and you're like, oh my gosh. So it does take some time. And I know when I was younger, I was guilty of, I've said this in the past, I was kind of a snob. I would quarantine some fish, and other people's, I would get in, they were my friend, and I'd be like, oh, they were fine. And usually they were. And usually from whatever I was shipping them or buying them from the pet store, they were usually fine too. But treat them all, just quarantine all fish. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. And definitely don't skip this step, because again, when I was younger, before I even knew about this stuff, I would acclimate them. I let them set for 15 minutes in my water, and I would open up the fish bag, and I would take fish water, everything in that bag, and just dump it into my everything tank. It was a 30-gallon Beaufront tank. Was the first tank I got in my first apartment. And it was kind of like my childhood tank. Whatever I saw at the fish store that I thought went in that tank. And I didn't quarantine anything. And sometimes things worked out, and sometimes I would have like, what's going on? Why are they dying? I don't understand. And I could have solved so many problems by just not skipping that step. And I didn't do it on purpose. I just wasn't aware. It took some growing up and becoming a better fish keeper to know that you need to do that. And if you haven't quarantined in the past, are you bad for it? No, because I haven't quarantined plenty. And it's just a thing that I've learned that it takes a bunch of issues out, just because if I do have something develop, like we said earlier, it's in that confined tank. I can treat it. I can see what I can do to help the situation. Sometimes they've gotten sick and there's nothing I can do. I've had fish that I've like helped from the fish tour that they've jumped out the tank and they got damaged, and I brought them home and put them in quarantine and did what I could to help them, but they still passed away. So there's sometimes they've just been exposed to something that you can't treat and it's not your fault. And sometimes they can have something that you can treat really quickly and you can be like, oh, look, they've recovered greatly, and they grow up and be beautiful
and you
fish.
Can move right on.
And
that's a very good point. You don't want to accidentally get a fish, not quarantine it, put it in your tank, and then all your other fish die. And then somehow that one that was sick to start with lives, but it killed everything else in your tank.
Yeah.
And that does happen, and it can happen.
Yeah.
It is a very not common, but it is a problem that can occur. So that way you're taking the variable out, because if you did that, then you're like, okay, so was it my fish already that were in the tank? One of them got sick for some reason, or was it the ones I just added? Trying to figure out what's going on when you don't know is like trying to pick out one marble out of a big old bucket of sand, and you're trying to find it and you don't know what's going on. So by separating all these fish out and quarantining them and adding them as they get healthy to your tank and community tank, and we're specifically talking about a community tank basically, or a species only where you're just adding in more of the same species, you're taking those variables out, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to pinpoint your problems.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. And for the community aspect, you're getting time to observe your fish and be a better fish keeper that way.
Yeah. I will always tell you to quarantine your fish. It solves so many problems. And it's not that I am looking out for the tank I'm putting them in. I'm protective of the fish I have. I really enjoy them and I don't want anything to happen, but I'm also protective of the new fish coming in because I want to make sure that I'm setting them up in the best way possible, whether it's in that quarantine tank forever and I just build it around them, or they eventually go in my community tanks or just a larger tank. I'm just trying to set up everybody the best I can for the future to be the healthiest. And sometimes during that quarantine process too, especially with puffers, it seems like sometimes they can be a little picky of eaters. So that time too is kind of, if they can be a little picky, I can pinpoint, okay, that food didn't work. This food will work. And then when I put them in the other tank, I know they're healthy, happy. I know what food they're going to eat. I know that, okay, if they're going in this tank, they like the same food. Not per se with puffers. I wouldn't put puffers in with anything else. But sometimes you might have a pickier eater that might like Vibrobites, and you have another fish over here that's a good compatibility for them, and they all like the same food. So you can there's a bunch of different benefits to quarantining your tank. I think that is something you should do, and don't make the mistake I did and just feel like you need to skip right over it, because it can help just prevent a lot of problems in the future by just taking that time out. And not only that, but it's hard not to impulse buy fish. I'm guilty of it. I'm really guilty of it. But if you can make a plan and be like, okay, I want to order these fish. They have this personality. I'm going to put them in quarantine for this long. I'm going to set up their quarantine tank to kind of set up get them used to my water and all that. You don't have to. We fell in love with some bumblebee gobies that were in a pretty high salinity, and yeah, they're in quarantine, but we had to rush together a tank last minute. So if you can just, it's hard to do, but don't impulse buy fish. Come up with a plan, research them, know what they need before you even get them in, and that will also help. Is it hard? Yes, but
I mean, it's our nature is the hobbyist and fish keepers. You see something, you want it. You want it now. You wanted it yesterday.
Am I lucky to have everything in the fish room to do that? Yes, and that's why we did. But sometimes that can be difficult to just throw, like you're scrambling to find something that will work as a quarantine tank. So just, if you can take that little extra time, plan out what you want, know how you're going to quarantine them, have a guesstimate in your head about, I'm going to quarantine them about this long. And
if nothing goes wrong, I'm going to quarantine them for this long.
And maintenance your quarantine tank, and your hospital tank too. And when I say hospital tank, it's the same thing as a quarantine tank. But let's say I have a fish that I just noticed did something and has an injury or something, and I scoop that fish out and I put it into this quarantine tank or this hospital tank. It works the same. It's just sometimes my quarantine tanks are not always set up, whereas if I have a hospital tank, I'm more apt to keep that set up. But then again, they're interchangeable. Sometimes I'll make my hospital tank, if I have some new guppies come in, that's going to be the guppy tanks, But maintenance them too. Don't just keep them set up and never water change them or never do anything to it, because that tank is because there's something sick in there. So I do have its own siphon. I have like a water siphon, aquarium vac that's just for if I see ick.
Yeah, it's just
and
for
that's just for because you don't want to use
a specific set of tools just for your quarantine tank. Or hospital.
And that was
tanks.
Another thing that I was finally doing the quarantine thing, which yay, I was finally doing it. But at the same time, I had one net, one siphon, one bucket, and I was like, all I'm doing is spreading and transferring this. So I do have a devoted gravel vac and net and all that stuff for that, because I don't want to spread it either. Yeah, I'm doing quarantining and I'm medicating them and I'm doing what I need. But if I'm using the same stuff to maintenance that tank and I'm just coming right over here and putting it in this tank, that's not going to do you any favors either. So
that's a good point to bring up along with the quarantine. It really is a great point.
Well, you get to the point. I talk and eventually get to the point.
That's a very good point to bring up with quarantine. Quarantine, just like a person with a horrible disease, you have to have doubles of everything and clean it. You have to have that extra siphon, extra net, and it only is used for that tank. And it is also cleaned when you're done with it. You take it, you clean it however you see fit that's best for your equipment, and you clean it, and then that way it always stays with those tanks.
And you don't have to have because some of this stuff, I mean, everything's expensive, but a new gravel vac is like $20+. It can be expensive. So if you just have one, just make sure you clean it. And there's special things out there that you can use to clean it, but I use vinegar and water and then let it set. Every once in a while, I'll use bleach for something and let it air dry and set it aside. But it's normally vinegar and water that I use to clean. But I do have an extra set of that because when I was younger, I was learning, I was trying, I was quarantining. But at the same time, I was just spreading that everywhere else. So if you do notice something and you have a hospital tank set up or a quarantine tank set up, just be aware that if you have an active case of ick in that tank and you're water changing and you're doing everything you need to do, just don't take your hands from that tank and immediately stick them into another tank, because have I done that? And then as I'm doing that, be like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? Have I gotten lucky and not always spread it? Yes, but don't take that chance. Just don't do that. And like, I have made a lot of mistakes, but I cannot tell you how much that just quarantining your fish and not putting that old fish water into your new tank, whether it's from your best friend that has been breeding fish forever and you don't think you need to quarantine their fish, just because I'd rather you be like, oh, nothing happened, than be like, oh my gosh, I didn't quarantine and now everything has ick. So just take the advice, and whether it's a quick tote that you just have set up for that time, you put a sponge filter in a tote or a 10-gallon aquarium that you have laying around, and you let it set for 24 hours or whatever time you have, and you quarantine those fish and you break it down and you just put it away until you need it again. It's just best to somehow have a plan to quarantine fish. And if you need to separate them, and you, like me, and be like, well, that's a lot of work, I have, just this, I'll just put them in. Don't take the time, separate them out. Don't lose fish because of incompatibility. Don't do that. So I just hope that with all of these words that I have used and I have not gotten to the point, just quarantine your fish and don't use the fish water in the bag. Just strain it, whether it's a fish net. I've used a spaghetti strainer and need be. Just get rid of that old fish water. Don't put it in your tank, whether it's a quarantine tank or not. Just don't put that fish water in that tank. So quarantine is very important.
The main takeaway is quarantine your fish. Mm-hmm. Enjoy the process.
Yes.
Have time to observe this fish that you either impulse buyed or you'd been looking at forever, and now you have it. Enjoy it. Observe it. You're going to get to see whether it's healthy, not healthy. Hopefully it is healthy. You don't have any problems. But that's the time for you to work through all the little details that maybe you hadn't thought of in the beginning of what other plants you might need to put in this tank that you're getting ready to put it in with. Oh, because it likes some more coverage, and it'll look great with this other community fish I already have in there, and they looks like it's going to get along. And then you can introduce those fish. Once they're done quarantining, you can do it slowly too. That way, you can see how they're going to act, if it's going to be compatible or not.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we forgot something in this conversation, but I really hope that you've learned from my mistake how important quarantining your fish is. It just sets you up. Whether you have anything go wrong or not, it just sets you up for much better success with your new fish in the future. And I really hope that I have taught you from my mistakes to just don't skip this step. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. And like I said, if everything goes by and you don't see anything, great.
That's what's supposed to happen. Great. In the ideal world,
great.
That is what you want to happen. You want to set a quarantine tank up every time, and every fish lives, everyone's healthy, no one has any problems. Same for your plants. You put them in a quarantine tank, they don't hatch out a bunch of snails or duckweed or something pops up, and you're like, where'd all this come from?
But I guess just thank you so much for listening, and if you would like to watch this lovely podcast, you can check out ScienceGal Aquatics, the memberships on YouTube. You can watch this podcast. But mainly, thank you for listening and being here with us to listen to our discussion over how important quarantining is for your fish.
Yes, check us out on ScienceGal Aquatics on YouTube.
But until next week, thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk soon. Bye.
Thank you. Until our next dilemma.
Bye.